Hey, Arcturus here. Today we're looking at the Combat Patrol for World Eaters from Warhammer 40,000. This is, of course, for Games Workshop miniatures. This kit comes with 31 miniatures and has a few different options for the miniatures you get inside of it. You do get 20 Khorne Berserkers, and those have the option of standard bolt pistols or plasma pistols, as well as some variation in the melee options that they have. This army does not yet have its codex as a filming list, so it still has the index available for free on the app, and the Combat Patrol rules are also free currently. The Lord on Juggernaut has two options. You can build him as the Lord Invocatus or as a World Eater Lord on Juggernaut. And this kit also comes with 10 Jackals. I think it's kind of nice that they gave you more on the Berserkers than on the Jackal side, as sometimes, like with Thousand Suns, they tend to stuff the boxes full of Zangors, which most people do not want, at least not in the quantities that they're given. So in this box, you do get 2 of the same transfer sheet for using for any of your transfers, as well as bases, of course, for all the models within it. The Jackals come on one large rectangular sprue. Slide that out of the way there. So the Jackals come on one large rectangular sprue that builds all 10 of your Jackals. I imagine there are probably a few extra pieces, but not too many. This is the World Eaters version of Cultists. Then we get the Lord on Juggernaut, however you choose to build him. This one will have extras because there are 2 different ways to build him, though how useful those extras are will depend on what you want to use them for. I know it does come with 2 different types of head, as you can see here and here, and then up here, and the other half is floating probably right here as well. So, very cool looking model, if you like the chaos aesthetic. And then you get 2 sets of the sprue for the Khorne Berserkers. That's going to be 3 individual rectangles. We have here 1 set of the weapons and backpacks, it looks like, and some heads and some shoulder pads. And then we have one of the larger sprues here. And I'll show these again at the end after we look at the finished models to see how many parts we have left over for kit bashing or basing on other models that you might have or your friends might have. One of the nice things about this hobby is you can always find somebody who collects a different army and would be more than happy to use some of your leftover bits for basing and to share their bits for you to do your own basing if that's what you like. So, and then you do get 2 sets of the 3 sprue for the Khorne Berserkers. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave me a comment down below if you have this Combat Patrol or are planning to pick it up. So here we have all the models for the World Eaters Combat Patrol. You have all 31 of them. You do wind up with 2 squads of Berserkers. If you build the Berserkers with the specialty weapons, you do wind up with 2 identical squads. Or at least I did. So you could, with, I think, minimal effort, especially with the shoulder pads, swap around some of the arms, I think, and get some different poses, or same poses with different weapons, which might help break up if you have multiple squads of them. But if you are building it right out of the box and you want to build it with the specialty weapons like the plasma pistols and the great weapons, then you will wind up with 2 basically identical squads. For the Juggernaut, there is 2 different builds for him. I built him as the Lord Invocatus, which is technically not what's listed in the Combat Patrol, but to me it looks similar enough that I see no reason not to build him that way when it's for a Combat Patrol, where it's the same base size, it's the same model. It's basically identical, except the position of the model is slightly different. And then you have 10 Jackals. The Jackals actually have some variations in what you can build with them in terms of how the weapons line up. Some are going to be similar across models with minor variations, like just head swaps, whereas others are going to actually have like different weapons. There's some interchangeable ones. So let's take a closer look at some of these. We're only going to look at 10 of the Berserkers closely because, as I said earlier, the 2 squads are identical, so there's no reason to go through 2 squads of them. So we'll start off just from the front, just a standard berserker. I'll adjust some things here to hopefully get some better lighting. So here we have just one berserker with bolt pistol and chain weapon. And there is some variation between them, right? So you can have different heads and different backpacks, but the poses between the 2 squads will be the same and the weapons will be the same because the arms are linked together there. They are very nice models, very dynamic poses. They're very nice models with very dynamic poses for a lot of them. However, they're also very pointy. After putting these together, my fingers were definitely sore from all the pointy sections. They also have a few mold lines. They also have a few mold lines that are very difficult to reach. And that had to be left on there simply because of all the spikes and positioning for them. So they do generally have 2 separate shoulder pads. You have one here on the melee arm that has the World Eater symbol, and then you have some variations here for the pistol shoulder. A lot of them do have these full shoulder pads, but some of them do have a smaller one, which I think we'll look at on the next model. And there are some variations on the head horn section shape, as well as some variations here on the backpacks, as I'm sure you've noticed. So this one has the other shoulder pad, where it's that sort of half shoulder pad, gives a little more room. Normally the arm is then not having armored on there. And you can see here a variation on the shoulder pad with some skulls. There's some skulls in the center. The leader, so here's the 2-handed axe. Very cool, very iconic for Khorne berserkers. Some very nice stuff there. Just a nice pose with the axe, very dynamic. A little difficult to put on. The axe was a little harder than the sword. I don't know if maybe I over-trimmed the sprue mark on this, the sprue connection on this one, or if it's just a little difficult, but I did have a lot of difficulty with both the 2-handed weapons on getting them to align correctly. I did get them in the end. They weren't impossible, unlike some other models, like some of the old Necron models were basically impossible if you didn't get it 100% perfect. But these were okay. They were a little difficult, but they were generally okay. The Jackal was actually a little easier, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. One thing I do wish they did for these with the 2-handers was that they keyed all the parts, so there was no way to get it in the wrong position. Sometimes they do like a slight texturing to the model to make it so it should line up correctly, but there's still a lot of wiggle room in those. I wish it was kind of, I hate to say it, but more like one of the easy build ones, at least for the 2-hander models, simply because getting those 3 contact points to align at the same time can be very tricky. And if it doesn't align, it looks really bad. So another just standard with this one with plasma pistol. You can build 3 plasma pistols. So in the combat patrol, the leader can have a plasma pistol, and then every 5 models, you can have 1 more plasma pistol. So I, of course, built them with 3 plasma pistols in each squad. The poses are the same. So for instance, this one could be replaced with a bolt pistol, but it'd be the same pose. And this backpack for the icon bearer, I think you could interchange it, but based on the instructions, you shouldn't, or it's not supposed to be, but it's hard to say. So it's a very cool mini though, with that axe and plasma pistol. It's a great pose. I really do quite like them, these new sculpts for these Khorne berserkers. They're very nice. And then for the last one, we have the leader, who has a bit more ornate of a helm. Some extra skulls on there, along with a plasma pistol, and also a very nice pose. So 3 plasma pistols for each squad of 10, and you can have 2 of the 2-handed weapons, which do have a separate profile, but we'll cover that after we look at all the models. So up next, why don't we look at the Jackals. These models were a little easier to put together. They have a few less spikes than the other models. But in other ways, they were a little worse. Part of the reason they were worse is because some of the weapons are not listed on the instructions. So for the jackals, a lot of the melee weapons are interchangeable. It just depends on which arm you're attaching them to. So for most of them, you can, like this guy could have 2 swords or 2 axes, because it's a hand piece. So that's a little more annoying. You have a lot more smaller parts than the berserkers, so that's also a little finicky, at least for me. A lot of the smaller parts are a little difficult to clean up from the sprue without, where you run a higher risk of cutting yourself with those. For the jackals, you do have, again, the same problem as the berserkers. Right? If you build this guy with the 2-hander, he's always going to look the same, which is fine. I mean, you're at most running 3 squads, so it's okay. There's at least more variation amongst the jackals than in the berserkers, I think, but there's still a lot of same models in terms of, but they're all still going to be based off the same pose, but there's a little bit more wiggle room with the weapons. I do think the jackals are pretty cool, but they are kind of tiny and they aren't, dudes in power armor, so that does not help. They all have these backpacks with chains that connect to their weapons, which are pretty cool. You can have them with 2 axes, 2 swords, sword and axe. And then there is a leader, which we saw with the banner. No, actually, I'm sorry. There's a leader, there's a bannerman, and then there is a specialty model in each squad of 10. The specialty model is called the Dishonored, and he can take a weapon called the Skull Crusher. So here we have one with 2 axes, just really cool models, really well done, I think, even if they are kind of more limited on poses, but I think the detail is higher than some of the old, more free posing models. So here we have the leader, and kind of tell he's got that big backpack with the extra skulls on it. He has a couple different variations. I went with this one because it was unique to this particular model, although I think you could just swap it out with any of the other ones. Actually, on second thought, you probably can't because it is tied to the arm and it is kind of keyed. Unlike some of the Khorne Berserker ones, these are much more keyed to the specific torso for the arms. The way they get around that is by having half the hand attached to the weapon and then you glue that together. So this arm would have to be swapped out if you wanted to have a separate leader for them. And then we have the Dishonored, who can have 2 hand weapons, or he can have the Skull Flail, which I thought was really cool looking. He has this nice big backpack with some stuff that kind of attaches into his head, which detached on mine, which I think is okay. It's not the end of the world. It's annoying, but not the end of the world. Some nice Khorne symbols there on the back with the robes. And then he has this thing, I think it's called a Skull Crusher, because this guy is the Dishonored. He does come on a 40mm base as opposed to the 25 of the other jackals. Here we have the Lord on Juggernaut. Very cool model. There are a couple different head options for the mount. And of course a different head option if you build him as the standard World Eater for the rider. So some very nice back options there with some large spines and stuff. Cool axe. Very dynamic pose. One annoying thing. Well, oh, that's not good. The hell? Okay, so something else I need to fix. I didn't realize this had popped up. One annoying problem is the front of the model is all put onto the single point. And if this bends at all, it's going to affect how your model poses, as you can see. So that's something to be careful of. This part can bend pretty easily. It's a very tiny contact point and it holds basically all the front weight of the model, which I think is not the best design from a putting it together perspective. I mean, it's a very cool model, very dynamic pose, but I had not noticed it was kind of tilted there because this part is bent. So that's something to be aware of when you're putting this together. Very cool World Eater there on the back. So some nice shoulder pads. Head, very cool model. Very nice dynamic. It'd be cool if we got a unit of these as like World Eater heavy cavalry to slam into the lines. It'd be pretty cool. I don't think we will, but would be cool. So for instance, for the jackals, you do have a few other arms So you can do the Dishonored with these larger arms. You have a couple different heads for the Dishonored. You can, for the leader, give him a different torso plate or head. And then you have a couple different hand weapons that you can use. One problem with the sprue is the instructions only list some of the hand weapons for the jackals under the interchangeable parts. So for instance, you have 5 and 5, but there's way more than 5 of those weapons. When I say way more, there's several more than those 5 weapons for each hand. And some of them are, of course, specific to like the Dishonored or the leader, but some of them are just straight up interchangeable with the other parts, and those aren't listed in the instructions. So just pay attention when you're working on those, and that'll work pretty well, I think. For the Khorne Berserkers, there's very little difference in the leader. As you can see here, the blue is the champion, and the purple is just the standard Berserker, either built with bolt pistol or plasma pistol. And you have variations for those two, but the main difference between these is the head. And I guess the axe is slightly different, but it's the same pose and it's still also an axe. Yeah, so for the Lord on mount, which I built Lord Invocatus, which is pretty good, but you can also build him as just the World Eater Lord on Juggernaut. And let me see if there's a better picture. And even with the variations on the mini, he's much more stable than the Lord Invocatus. So if you're thinking that might be an issue for transport or something, it might be better to build this mount than the other mount. But that is up to you, of course. You do get plenty of extra heads on your Berserker sprue, some extra shoulder pads of both sides, including I found up with a lot of the extra small shoulder pads because you don't actually use that many of them. Some more heads here and a few extra arms. And oh, that's the same sprue. And let's see, where's the other one? And then some additional axes and guns as well. So you do wind up with some nice extras on like some parts, and for the Lord Invocatus, you wind up with a lot of extra parts. You might be able to, with some finagling, be able to get an extra World Eater Lord, but I don't really think there's a benefit to doing so. Although I will admit that this helmet is really cool, so if you want to swap out a regular champion for your Berserker's head there, you could do so pretty easily. But you also get some extra heads for your mount, a different style of head, different spike thing. So the other one has like a chainsword helmet. This one just has spikes. So a lot of nice little extras in this. And you, of course, get some transfer sheets. So if you are taking this in the combat patrol, you do take the entire box. So that's all 31 models. The Lord is Lord Karagar the Blooded. He comes with the plasma pistol and the chain blade. Since it says chain blade and not chain axe or chain sword, you're pretty good to go either way. And he cannot lead any units when he's taken that way. I think in the index, he also cannot lead any units because there's no other mounted units that you can take. So he's just a solo lord. For the Berserkers, as I mentioned earlier, you can take you can take your champion with plasma pistol. You can take up to 2 additional ones with plasma pistols. One of those being the icon bearer. And then you can take 2 with the Cornate Eviscerator, which is the melee weapon. The difference between the 2-handed chainsword and 2-handed chain axe is just the appearance on the model. There's not actually a data sheet difference in this edition. That may change in future editions. And then all other of your Berserkers are equipped with bolt pistols. And the ones with 2-handers are also equipped with bolt pistols. And then for the Jackals, you have their leader, who's called the Jackal Pack Leader. You have one Dishonored, who's that bigger guy with the Skull Smasher. And then you have one Jackal with an icon of Khorne, and the one with the 2-handed weapon, and then the other 6 are just standard. And that's for the Combat Patrol. For World Leaders, both the Combat Patrol and the Index, World Leaders have not yet received their codex, so all their data sheets are still freely available through the app. The Combat Patrol, I believe, will remain freely available, and I don't believe they will be getting a new Combat Patrol box. I think most armies kept the same one from last year, although that may not be correct. I'm not 100% sure on that. But this Combat Patrol should at least still be available through 10th edition, so if you are interested in playing them, it should be available for the rest of the edition via the app for free. Well, that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time with another video.